The desert gets the legends, the camel, the falcon, the tent in the sand. But half of this nation's old life happened with its back to the desert, facing the other way, out at the water. For people of this coast, the Arabian Gulf was not the edge of the map, it was the middle of it, a road that ran down the length of East Africa, across the ports of India, and out into the wider Indian Ocean. And the only thing that made that road usable was the boat. Now, before the great trading ships, there were the small boats, the vessels of ordinary coastal life. The Abra carried people across the creek, from one side of a town to the other. The Shasha, light and simple, was made for fishing close to shore. The Huri, the Mashwa, the Shahuf, the Lange. Each one was built for a job, moving people, carrying goods, working the shallow water where the day's catch came in. These were the boats a man saw every morning. They were not built for glory. They were built to work, and they did, generation after generation, along the same stretch of coast. Then there were the ships that left the sight of land. There were nearly a dozen types, each one shaped for its purpose. The largest and most famous was the Boum, the Great Dhow of the trading routes, tall at the bow and built to carry cargo across open sea. The Safar carried merchants on the long voyages, the ones that lasted months. The Qata'a ran the shorter routes closer to home. And then there were the ships of the Pearl Banks, the Jalibut, the Bakara, the Sanbouk. These carried divers out to the oyster beds through the summer seasons and carried passengers when the season ended. A ship like the Boum was the largest thing most people in this region would ever see built by human hands, and every plank of it was shaped without a single machine, because there were no factories. Every one of these ships was built by hand, in open workshops on the shore, by men who carried the knowledge in their heads and their hands. There were no written plans. The shape of a hull lived in the memory of the master builder and passed from one generation to the next. The tools were simple, and they were exact. The Majdah, a drill with a pointed iron head, bored a hole in each plank before the nail went through it, so the wood would not split later. The Jadum, an iron axe with a steel edge, smoothed the timber until the surface ran true, and the Masamir, the iron nails, fastened plank to plank until a stack of timber had become a hull that could cross an ocean. A large ship could take months to finish. The men who built them were among the most respected in any coastal town because the community's livelihood floated on their work. And then they had to find their way. There were no satellites, no printed charts of these waters. A captain crossing to India had only the sky, the sea, and what he had been taught. By day, he reads the sun. A simple shadow stick showed him its path and his direction from it. By night, he reads the stars. The star Suhail, rising low in the south, separated north from south in the dark. For finer work, he carried the astrolabe and the compass, which the sailors here called al-dira. With them, he could take the height of a star above the horizon and turn it into a position on the open water. There was also the durur, a system that tracked the positions of the stars across the whole year. It told the sailor which season he was in, what weather was coming, and when the winds would turn, because the long voyages lived and died by the winds. The crews timed their journeys to the seasons, riding the wind out to the far ports and waiting for it to turn before they sailed home. Now, this was not guesswork. It was a science, carried in memory, passed down by men who had never seen it written, and it was accurate enough to cross open sea and find the way back. All of it served one purpose: trade. This coast had been a station on the trade routes for thousands of years, long before anyone drew a border or wrote the region's name. Goods and people were already moving through these waters. The ships of the Pearling Age carried that inheritance forward. They took the pearls of the Gulf out to the markets of India and beyond. They brought back timber, cloth, spices, and rice, the goods a desert coast could not grow or make for itself. They tied the small harbors of this shoreline to East Africa, to the Gulf ports, and to the great markets of the Indian Ocean. A town on this coast was never truly isolated. Through its boats, It was joined to half the world. The boats were the great achievement of this coast. A people with no heavy industry, no engines, and no modern port-built vessels by hand that crossed one of the busiest seas on earth and brought them home again by the light of the stars. These ships were the lifeline that tied a small stretch of shoreline to the world. But the sea was never only a road. It was also a source of wealth, drawn up from beneath the surface one breath at a time. The boats carried the divers out, and what happened when those divers went over the side with a stone, a rope, and a single lungful of air is the story of the Pearl. That is where we go next.